Hey everybody, it's Cindy here, and I wanted to talk to you today about grief and the holiday season. I've been doing videos for several months, and at one point, I think it was around the middle of May, I did a series about grief, a series of videos about grief, maybe four of them or something like that. Anyway, if you're grieving and you haven't seen those, that was a pretty lengthy uh, discussion about grief and how to handle different aspects of grief and what to expect and how to help yourself. And or if you know someone who's grieving and you want to support them, you might direct them to those or watch them yourselves to be of more support to the grieving people in your lives. Anyway, I wanted to follow up now because that series was really popular. I had a strong response to that, so I know there's a lot of grieving people out there. And I know that the holidays can intensify grief. And so I wanted to offer some things now. You may be like, well, is it the holiday season already? Well, Thanksgiving's coming up soon, and then there's all the December holidays with different religions. Hanukkah, winter solstice, Kwanzaa, Christmas, and then New Year's. Yes, we are entering that season. And for grieving people, it can be particularly stressful and upsetting. So I wanted to offer some dialogue around that and some suggestions on how to help if you are indeed in that situation. So why does the holiday season intensify grief so much? Well, one of the reasons, of course, is the absence of the deceased person or people that you've lost in your life. And maybe this is your first holiday season without them, but maybe not. Maybe you're still pretty intensely grieving someone you lost the year before that. It doesn't matter whether it's a very fresh, raw grief or a long-term chronic grieving situation. Regardless, you miss your people who aren't there. And so when families are gathering and groups are gathering together, the absence of the person is typically more profound. People talk about the empty chair at the table. Some families choose to leave a chair empty, like if grandpa always sat at the end of the table, that you might put his chair there and set a place setting for him and no one else is allowed to sit there. Some families like to do that. It's fine if you do, it's fine if you don't. But anyway, everybody notices when someone is not there, and so it triggers those grief feelings, those sadness. It's kind of like losing them all over again at some level. So that's one of the reasons that grief intensifies the holiday season. Another reason is that some of your traditions may be compromised because of the death of a loved one. For example, you may have always gone to your aunt's house. Maybe you all always gathered for Christmas dinner at your aunt's house, and she died this year. So now what do? You're not sure what to do, and maybe everybody has different ideas about how that should be handled. And that can cause some uproar or conflict or stress. And some families don't know what to do. They just stop traditions. Then you feel like you're missing that. And so it's things like that can muddy up the season for grieving people. And then the whole theme kind of the holiday season is it's the most wonderful time of the year. But for grieving people, it can be one of the worst times of the year. It doesn't have to be, and I'm not trying to be doom and gloom about it, but I am wanting to acknowledge how difficult this can be for grieving people. So if you're not feeling it, woo, the joy and the thrill of the holidays, and it's so tough to avoid because there's signs and symbols of the holiday going on everywhere. The music in the stores, all the merchandise, all the retail focus, the food, even the grocery stores have, holiday preparation things going on. And so and then in the churches and synagogues and everything else, there's There's more happening in the holiday season, a lot of significance and meaning around the holiday season, and it just may feel like, oh, make it stop to those of you who are grieving. I mean, many people in America anyway get stressed out and overwhelmed in the holiday season because there's so many parties, there's so many gatherings, there's so much to do. Many people bake, many people decorate, many people buy gifts, many people travel, many people have guests. I mean, there's lots, and then there's the school programs, and on and on and on and on and on it goes, and then all the extra religious activities going on. It's so, even when we're not grieving, the season can really zap the energy and cause some overwhelm for a lot of people if you don't have a good balance with it. But when you're grieving on top of it, it just adds to the enormity of that. It can just add to the enormity of that. So that's another reason that grief intensifies holidays. Another is the isolation of the season. We just turned our clocks back, and now our days are light. Hours of light are getting shorter, and it's getting colder. Well, I'm in the Midwest, so I'm speaking of the culture here. So it's getting chillier, colder, darker, shorter days. And so for people who are already grieving, it's kind of like being depressed in many ways. And without as much sunshine and not getting out as much and things like that, it can feel more isolating. You can feel more alone. And some people who are grieving also don't like to or can't drive or don't feel like getting out even when it's nice, but they really, really don't feel like getting out when it's cold and dark or if it gets snowy and things like that. And so that isolates them more. They feel more alone than normal in their grief. And then grief can compromise your immune system. Our mind and bodies are so closely connected, right? We're all one system. And so if you're stressed out a lot emotionally, then that puts physical stress and strain on your body. And so your immune system isn't likely to be as strong when you're grieving. So then we're entering flu season, right? Also with this time of year. So you're more likely to catch the colds going around or any little flu bugs going around. So be extra careful about that because your immune system is likely compromised, and we don't want to add the stress of illness to an already challenging picture. And then the calendar, we were winding down a year now, and then we're starting a new year in these next couple of months. And the endings and the beginnings that represents can be very challenging symbolically to grieving people. Endings, the end of a year is a loss, and any loss of any kind can trigger the grief and feelings of loss from the loss of a loved one. So there's that kind of thing going on. Then I've heard a lot of grieving people say over the years, when the calendar clicks over into the next year, like when it's January 1, that it really triggers that feeling of, oh wow, life is moving on without my loved person, and the world just keeps going even though I've lost this person. And it can be really upsetting to get out of the year that their loved one was last alive and living with them or around them. There's a resistance to moving on sometimes, even though people want to be at peace with grief, of course. So that endings, beginnings to transitions, that all can stir up grief and loss, feelings of loss, and that fear of moving on, that desire to move on, but also that sadness to be moving on without the loved person here. And then the other thing that intensifies grief for a lot of people is kind of the reason for the season. So people can be in conflict with God or whatever religious entity they worship, and kind of be, in conflict or confusion. Why did I have to lose this person? Why now? Why me? Why this happen? How could you have abandoned him or her? Whatever, you can be going through some religious anger toward God. Why didn't God save my loved one? And then the themes of, Jesus, and I'm talking about Christmas now. I know there's other, but I'm Christian, so that's where my head tends to go. So I apologize for not being more universal right in this moment. But for example, for Christians, with Jesus and the birth of Christ and saving the world and the whole, just all of that can just trigger some pretty complicated feelings in grieving people, especially if they're just feeling angry right now, and maybe their spiritual life is, hopefully your religious and spiritual life and faith is like one of your most helpful aspects of your life as you've gone through this grief, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it takes a while, and I always tell people, don't worry about being angry with God. God can handle it and loves you and is watching out for you and will be right there when you're ready to reconnect and that kind of thing. And if there's anything about divinity that I feel secure about, it's that we are understood as humans, like what we're going through, and that the divine love watching over us all is patient, kind, and loving, and understands better than we even do, and will be there, and is always there for us, and will be there for us again when we are ready to be more responsive to that part of our lives. So anyway, some of the meanings, the religious meanings and traditions behind the holidays can be extra challenging for grievers. So how do we ease all this stress and deal with all this overwhelm at holiday time? Well, I really want you to hear me here. I really want you to hear me here. I want to just really give you permission to rethink your holiday season. Now, maybe for you, doing everything you've always done feels comforting and gives you a sense of security and will mean the most to you and make you happiest. And if that is so, then so be it. Wonderful. Whatever feels good to you, please honor and do. Really, whatever that means. If it means you want to bake the 5 pies again this year like you always have, and attend the 14 religious services this month, in the next 2 months, and go to all the family, both sides of the family or all sides of the family, and get together with friends and buy all the gifts. And if you want to do all that, good for you. If that's what feels good, that's great. But if you're not feeling it, if you're feeling like, overwhelmed, and it just feels like there's a giant mountain in front of you and you just don't know how you're going to climb it and get through the holiday season, please consider these things. Number one, I want you to only attend the events that mean the most to you. Respond to the invitations that mean the most to you or you feel most compelled to participate in this year. You do not have to do everything. Not everything. You don't. You can if you want, but you don't have to. So look at all your invitations. Look at all that's coming up on the calendar, personally and professionally. And that's the other thing. Then there's the work Christmas parties, holiday gatherings on top of it. So just look around at all the options going on and ask yourself, what are the main 3 or 4? Or what's the main one? Or what do I most feel like I want or need to participate in? And then just do those and politely decline the rest of the invitations. You don't even have to explain it to people. Thank you for the invitation. I will not be there. I really appreciate your invitation. I'm not going to be able to make it this year. Boom. Anyway, okay, so balance your calendar. You are in charge of your calendar. Number 2, maintain some or all traditions that feel really good to you, or be creative about adding new ones if you'd like. If it feels like a transition time in your life and you want to try something new, maybe you've always wanted to do things in a different way, but the person who died was very adamant about doing things a certain way, and now you're kind of freed up to mix it up a little bit if you want, great. So maintain the traditions that you really want to. If you have little children and you've had traditions with them throughout their lives that you still want maintained, even if a parent has died or a grandparent or something, or a sibling, then by all means, respect your traditions. However, feel free to look at the whole season a different way as well. An example of this is in the early 90s. A friend of mine had her husband died suddenly. He was in an accident and died. And the first Christmas he died, she did a totally different thing. Instead of attending the family holiday gatherings and church gatherings and all that stuff, she took the kids and went on a cruise. Left the country and headed out on a boat on the ocean and went on a cruise that she'd always wanted to do, and just wanted to get away with her core nuclear family. And that was a wonderful choice for them. So I don't know how her extended family felt about it. I don't care, actually. What's important is that you as a grieving person feel like you are honoring where you're at in your life and doing what you most need to do. So that's a way that she changed tradition that year and felt really good about it. If you're going to do everything, you want to keep your house clean, you want it decorated, you want to bake all the stuff, you want to get all the shopping, blah, 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 blah. Ask for help. Ask for help. You don't have to be a hero here. You don't have to be Betty Crocker, Martha Stewart, Superman. You don't have to do that. You can ask for help. There's many people, I'm sure, that would be happy to assist you. Or another way to look at it is to just kind of lower your standards. Normally I don't say such things, but who cares if the house is a little dirty this year? Who cares if you don't bake every kind of pie? Maybe everybody gets the same gift this year. Maybe this year you get everybody the same book for Christmas. Maybe you get everybody the same scarf for Christmas. Maybe you get everybody the same gift card this year for Christmas to simplify your shopping, for example. Anyway, ask for help with anything that's overwhelming you, or do less. Maybe you don't send holiday greetings this year. Who cares? It's okay. You can do something different next year. The year I was getting divorced, this was not due to death, but the grief of divorce. I didn't send out holiday cards. I just couldn't do it. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even know how to. I just couldn't do it. And that was fine. I got back to it the next year and it was a whole different ballgame. I felt so different the next year. So anyway, increase your self-care. Increase. Usually what happens in a particularly hectic time of life for most people is the self-care decreases. But then the added stress, the less self-care, that's a bad combination. So you grievers especially need to keep up your self-care or increase it even. So resting more as much as possible, even napping if you need to, things like that. Really watch the food intake, like how much you're eating and what kinds of food you're eating. Watching your alcohol limits, things like that. Being very careful what goes in, how much and what it is, because we know you're grieving, we know you're stressed, we know you're depressed, we understand all that, and often people go in excess with some of their behaviors at this time, and then forget about what helps. So go on a brisk walk for 10 minutes Try to get to bed earlier at night. Eat as healthy as you possibly can. Small meals, 3 to 5 times a day, unless your medical, your doctor's telling you something different or whatever. Anyway, really increase the self-care. Maybe get a massage this month if that's not something you always treat yourself to, or call a friend and say, can I just vent to you? Or go for that run at the track, or, whatever de-stresses you and kicks in your endorphins and things like that. So increase the self-care. Increase the self-care. And then you may want to acknowledge the deceased person as you're experiencing the holidays in whatever level you're choosing. Like I said earlier, some people put the empty chair up to the table and set a place for their loved one. And so having them symbolically there on a spiritual level, I guess, kind of thing. Some families, when they sit down for Thanksgiving dinner, for example, go around the table and say something they feel blessed to have in their lives. Well, when you're grieving, you could put a little twist to it too and say something you're thankful for about the person that you all lost this year, that you miss, or share a special memory that you have of that person. What I'm hoping for most of you is that there will be a freedom to mention the person, say his or her name, talk about the memories, acknowledge the grief, cry if you need to, laugh hysterically if you want to, in remembering, joy-filled things about them, anything around that, but it's okay to acknowledge them. I know someone who buys or gets or makes or buys a new ornament for their Christmas tree every year as a memory of someone. And so they think about his life and get a symbolic ornament or make a symbolic ornament that represents something about his life. So like 1 year it was a fishing pole, fish kind of ornament. Another year it was a little camper. Another year it was a golf ball. Another year, things that were like his life. And so they add to the tree every year as a memory, as an acknowledgement of his life in their life. So you might find a way to do that. And you may want to, if there's a cemetery, if there's a grave, you may want to go there and put something there. You may want to decorate the grave. It's okay if you do. It's okay if you don't. If you've planted a tree in your backyard in their memory, you might want to decorate it or spend some time out there and say something. Anything you want to do. Oh, and for those of you who do Christmas greetings, Christmas cards or letters, or blast out an electronic Christmas greeting on Facebook or something, you might add or put the obituary in there for those who actually don't even know this person died this year. And you may say something like, our family greets you this holiday season in memory of our mother who died, October 12th or whatever. So then your people all know, the people that maybe you don't contact but once a year at holiday time will hear your news, and it's a very tactful, wonderful way. People appreciate knowing the reality of what's going on. They like to know when someone has died and that kind of thing, so they can acknowledge it. And many people may not have heard yet, depending on when it happened and how spread out far and wide your people are. So anyway, so acknowledge the absence of the deceased in some way. Memorialize them in some way that feels good to you, whatever that is. And please take really good care of yourselves these next several weeks. I always want you to take care of yourself, but I want you to be extra kind and sensitive to yourself as you're moving through the holiday season. The good news is that there is fun in the holidays and joy to be had if you can delight in that, and hopefully you'll be surrounded by loved ones, more so than maybe you are other times of the year, I hope. And then as the new year dawns upon us all, that is a chance to begin again. And so what I wish for you is that that can feel somewhat freeing to you, and that you do have things yet to look forward to despite going through this terrible loss in your life. So all the best to you as you move through this season, and I hope this was helpful, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.